Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of The Joy of Coding. Welcome, welcome. I've got a special episode for you today. Um, I'll show you. So let me just change to my screen with camera. Uh, Here's the special thing. I'm not actually here. So today, apparently, while you're watching this, is May 27th, 2015, but I'm filming this on May 22nd, on the Friday after work, because, well, I'm not going to be there on the 27th. I'm on PTO. I'm on holiday. So, uh, I'm not here. But I don't want you to go without an episode of The Joy of Coding. So this is a super short, contained episode that I wanted to deliver. And I promised during the last episode, where I failed to mention I'd be away this week, but during my last episode, I did talk about this like soundboard thing that I'd been working on to play sounds during the Joy of Coding. Sorry, and I wanted to demonstrate that, and maybe even show you some of the code that goes along that I'm using to do it. So first of all, let me demonstrate. This is Wacky Morning DJ. I don't know if you can see this. This is my app that I've written that I can. It's actually, well, it's on my phone here. Like it's I'm showing it on my phone. It's actually running on the computer that I'm broadcasting with, and it's this my phone is now controlling my computer. So like I can play a song, for example. Not bad. How about these are great sounds for like discoveries or something. Like for example, oh, I just learned this new way of converting Coco NS strings to gecko strings. Or or we can do like sadder things like, oh no, my build failed. I've got like a whole bunch of sounds in here. Now, how does this work? Well, how does my whole system work? I'm going to show you. I haven't actually open sourced the code yet. I haven't put it up on GitHub or anything yet. I will soon. And maybe I'll even do it tonight or this weekend or something, and then I'll link to it in my blog post. So here's what I'll do is actually I haven't. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just push this to GitHub immediately after this video. Maybe I'll even just do that, warts and all, because I really haven't looked through the code. Um, but I should probably make sure that the licenses. It's probably well. Okay, I'm gonna go and make sure that all the licenses allow me to do it. Make sure that I'm not like breaking any rules, and then I will push it. And you should go to my blog at mikeconley.ca/blog, and then you can maybe find a link to the GitHub repo. I'll also, on Air Mozilla, if you're watching this video, I'll put a link in additional links to the GitHub repo, and I'll also put a link if you're watching this on YouTube in the video description once it's up. So hopefully, if you're watching this in the future sometime, which I think all of you are, then you can look at the code, warts and all, because it's pretty rough. I wrote it in a hurry. I wasn't able to sleep a couple nights ago. I think it was like a week ago. I couldn't fall asleep, and so I thought I'd write this thing. So how does it work? Great question. Let me show you. Here's the code. I call it Wacky Morning DJ. Sorry, my face is kind of in shadow right now. I'm not in a very sunny location. It's after work. The sun's gone down, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to see my face. What matters is the code. Wacky Morning DJ is what I call it, and I'm using Node because apparently that's the cool thing now, or it was last time I checked. I don't know what the cool thing is nowadays, but I'm used to JavaScript. I like JavaScript. I wanted to write something that I could use some of my JavaScript skills with, and Node seemed like the perfect choice. And what I do is I run this Node server on my local machine, and I use a framework called Express, which you may have heard of. It's a sort of a framework, an MVC maybe framework. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a web framework, a web application framework for Node that I don't know much about. I just know that it's pretty easy to like make a web thing with it. So that's at Express Node. Where was it? It's this Express.js. That's what it is. Expressjs.com. web framework is what they call themselves, and it was this easy to install. I had to get npm and I had to get Node naturally, and then once I had it, I installed Express and I was on my way. So let me show you what I mean. Here is what it gave me. I used like this express generator thing because in the getting started guide it talks about an express generator, and I used the express generator to like create a whole bunch of boilerplate that I worked off of. And so it gave me like all of this code that we're looking at right now, and then I modified that code in order to make it do what I wanted it to do, which is pretty simple in my mind, anyways. So it does things like it adds in this like cookie parser and something called Morgan, which is apparently some kind of logger, which I haven't really been paying attention to, and a favicon serve thing, and I use all of these things that's apparently all kind of built in. I think I made some modifications in here, not too many. I switched over to using Swig instead of Jade as the templating engine because I'm more used to the format of the Swig templating engine. Swig node template. Yeah, it's a templating engine that sort of resembles Django, which is some Django's templating, or Jinja, if you've ever used Jinja. It's a Python templating library or module, and this format is something I'm very used to. Whereas Jade was very alien to me, so Express is nice. It allows me to like swap in a different templating engine, and so I swapped in Swig. And what else did I do? The rest of this is pretty much what the generator just spat out. And this isn't really the interesting part. The interesting part is under, where was it? Bin, www. This is another thing that like the generator spat out, but this is where I ended up putting a lot of my like logic, which I'm not sure if even this is the right place to put it. This is like, I'm not planning on shipping this to hundreds and millions of users and making sure that my code is super easy to maintain or anything. I'm just building a little soundboard. So if this is the wrong place, too bad. Like, I'll pull request welcome, I guess. I won't complain until it bites me. So what I did was I installed this other. Again, this is mostly boilerplate that came with that came with the Express generator. But I also got this SFX library, and that's a node. That's something I got off of npm. SFX, and all it does is it allows me to play sounds on my computer on the server side. So if you're writing server side Node JavaScript, I can use it to interface with my local like audio player and play a sound very, very simply. Like it's as simple as saying play and then passing it a path, and it will play it. And what's nice about it is that it appears to be cross-platform, except that mostly cross-platform, I should say. I looked at the code for it here, and someone has opened an issue for it not having Windows support, although they have supplied a patch, or they've got like what you need in order to play a sound on Windows. So in theory, it should be relatively straightforward to patch this to work with Windows. So and it sounds like at least as of July 2nd, 2014, this maintainer was willing to accept pull requests. So who knows? Maybe I'll do that if I wanted this to work on Windows, because I have at least one person I know of who might be interested in also using Wacky Morning DJ. So this SFX thing I loaded in, and I load in this configuration. My configuration is just like what I'm running, like what I want to run my server on, 3000. And then I also pass in this WebSocket port because I use WebSockets to communicate between the browser front end, or sorry, the web front end and the client in the back, or sorry, the server in the back. I got my client and server mixed up. So here's kind of how the model of how it works. I run this server. I run this Node server in the background, and I browse. I make sure my phone and my computer are on the same network and they have access to one another. And I tell my phone to like browse to that particular port on my machine, on my local machine, and it pulls down, like it grabs this HTML. Let's see, under views, it grabs this HTML, which is basically a bunch of like Bootstrap stuff. If you've never used Bootstrap, it's a quite nice framework. Bootstrap, getbootstrap.com. It's like a HTML, CSS, JS framework, which gives you like a bunch of nice CSS and HTML boilerplate to work with some pretty pleasant defaults like nicely styled buttons and nice fonts, and it's responsive and all sorts of things. And so I spew out this HTML whenever the phone browses to the site or browses to the server, and then I run some JavaScript, and this JavaScript is called Wacky Morning DJ. And I pass it the port. In this case, the port is 3001. That's the WebSocket port. And then that JavaScript is over here. Now, I should keep in mind that I wrote this. I haven't looked at this code since I wrote it. It might be really, really sloppy. Things might be like really gross in here, but this is what I wrote. So there's this Wacky Morning DJ object that takes an args object, which right now is just the port. I guess I'm trying to be thinking forwards. Like maybe someday there are more things, more configuration I want to pass in. So I used an object. One thing I noticed is that I'm still using like var, which means that I'm using old school JavaScript in case other browsers want to be able to view this, and not necessarily browsers that are currently supporting like ES6 and ES7. Although if I want to use things like let and big arrow functions and all sorts of that cool ES6, ES7 stuff, I could have used Babel. Babel is this really neat tool that allows me to transpile any JavaScript that's written in with ES6 or ES7 stuff and convert it into ES5, which most modern browsers can understand, which is really great because I can write it the way I want it in a way that future browsers will be able to understand. But then Babel, I put Babel in the pipeline there, and it will like compile it down to something that current browsers will understand. And then whenever the landscape of browsers in the world all understand ES6 and ES7, I just take Babel out and I don't need it anymore, and we're good to go. I don't have to change any of my code, which is really, really nice. But I didn't do that, so I'm using the old JavaScript here, where I create this WebSocket, because what I want to do is once I've pulled down the HTML and the JavaScript, I want to open up a WebSocket to the server and send whenever I click on these buttons on the phone, whenever I press them, I don't want to have to like send an HTTP request because I think that's it seems too heavy. Like that seems like a lot of network activity just to say do this thing. When I don't have to like deal with things like cookies or authorization or anything like that. Like this is just a very, very simple application. So I thought, well, maybe I'll try this thing called WebSockets that I've heard of. And WebSockets allow me to do it's basically like message passing with ETNS, where I can just like send a string back and forth and serialize and deserialize and react. And I believe it's pretty lightweight. I believe it is. I didn't actually do the measurement. I probably should have done the measurement where I like implemented this using like a put HTTP request to see how long the round trip it would take for like me clicking a button to playing a sound on my machine versus using WebSockets. But I'm pretty certain that WebSockets are lighter weight. I think that's the whole point actually. And what's nice about them is that they're kind of persistent. I don't like I mean, they stick around. WebSocket will stick around, whereas an HTTP request, it's like one and done. I send it and then it's over. And so I don't have to like keep recreating this WebSocket. I just keep it open and then send messages through it, which is very cool. So we initialize after we create our WebSocket, and I point it to the right place. I initialize, and then I add a click event listener on the whole document. Instead of like adding a click event listener to every button, that seemed wasteful. I'll just add a click event listener to the whole thing, or to the document body, and then I will like differentiate what I do based on what it is that I clicked on, like whenever this click event listener gets it. So that way I don't have to create a whole bunch of click event listeners. It's just one, which is more efficient. And here's where I choose what to do. Like I get this well, you know what? We'll get here when we get here, because this click event listener, it doesn't come into play yet because we don't have any buttons, we don't have any sounds to play yet. Like if you looked at the HTML coming in here, none of those buttons are here. Like if you look, I got buttons here, but those buttons are not defined in the script. So where do they come from? And that is actually taken care of over here. So when we create this WebSocket, we also say if we receive a message through this WebSocket, handle it in onMessage. And so what's happening is, as soon as we connect, the server notices that we connect, and then it will send us a list of all the sounds that it can play. And then we can construct the buttons dynamically that way. So here in construct menu, and maybe I don't know if that's like the best way of doing it, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. Here we we get the container. The container is right here, and then we go through each element in the manifest, is what I call it, the client manifest, which is basically a mapping of name of sound to an ID of the sound, and the ID is generated in the server. But sorry, it's an object where, okay, this is what it looks like. Let me write it out. Like, here's an example. It's an object where the properties will be names of groups. So, for example, success, and then that will be an object. The value of that property will be an object where it is the name of something like foo, and then it will be an ID like bar ID or something. And then we can have different groups: failure, Baz, Buzz ID. And then down here, there might be another group like waiting. And then, I don't know. I've run out of nonsense things to say, like Apple, Orange. And where Orange, Buzz ID, and Bar ID are just unique IDs, is all they need to be. And those unique IDs, again, are generated on the server side. But what these translate into, these groups, are like these groups of buttons. So if you look, I don't know if you can see this, but I have this, and you know what? It's probably rendering backwards. Here's what I'll do. If you, I'll just browse to the server. Whoops! I'll just browse to the server on my browser, which is handy. So, it creates these two groups, and I've got two right now: success and failure. And I can play the sounds from here too. Like, I don't have to play them from my phone. I can play them from here. Oh, sad trombone. Or waiting. Alright, let's not go. The other nice thing is that I can cut them off with one another. So if, like, waiting will take a long time. It's ironically very long, so, or appropriately long, so I can cut it off maybe with something else. So we create these groups here based on the groups that we were handed as part of the client manifest. And I'll show you where we construct that client manifest later in just a second. But here's where we create the H1 at the top. That's this thing. And then we create like a section. And that's each of these is a section, these two things. And then we add buttons. And for each button, we also add this like data ID attribute, and we set it to be the value to be the unique ID of the button. And then we append it, and so we get these two groups created, which is really nice. And then whenever we click on any of these buttons, we read the ID of the button that was clicked, assuming that the type of the node was a button, because I can click over here, and these are all click events, but the node that I'm clicking on is not a button, so I have to check here. And then I get the ID, and I'm able to use like jQuery's data API to get quick access to the attribute that has data-ID. And I log a message that I clicked a particular ID, so we can actually see what's going on in here. I clicked 0, 3, 4, and 1. I just use numbers for the IDs. And then I send through the WebSocket. I just send the ID. It's a very simple message. It's just like, play this one, the one with this ID. And that is how the front end works. That's it. That's the front end. There is nothing else. I know I've got like jQuery in here to do some of this stuff more simply, and there's like a bunch of Bootstrap code that I do not use at all. But that's basically how the front end of Wacky Morning DJ works. The back end is back over here in www, where as we're starting up, I synchronously read in this sounds JSON file, which has this mapping of, so I've got my groups here, but then I've got this mapping of name to file, like file on my file system. Or sorry, it's a relative. Yeah, it's a relative path to a file, a sound file in my file system. And whenever I'm starting up the server, when I start up the server here, I read in that JSON file synchronously, and then I create two manifests. The client manifest that I'll eventually send to the client, and a server manifest, which, because the server doesn't care about groups, it just doesn't care. It is just a mapping of ID to file name. Because the reason I don't tell the client just what the file name is because I don't feel like the client should have to know. That seems like I'm just separating my concerns there. Like all the front end needs to know is the name and something about it, and then the back end can know things about like the file name and whatnot. So that's why I kind of split it up this way. It's a really sloppy hack, but I did it. I create these two manifests right here where I create two objects and then I iterate through this JSON file, this sounds JSON file, and where's my script go? And then I just write the two manifest objects. Just so this one thing comes in, two things come out, and then that's what I return here. So yeah, manifests go in here, they come out here, and so I've got the client manifest and the server manifest. And again, the server manifest is just the ID mapped to a file name. That's here. And then I run the server. And then down here, where do I set up? Oh, I'm using this library, this node library called WS. Where is that imported? Right here. And WS is this WebSocket library. Or I should just call it WS. And I think there's actually, this is probably the better page to go to. Yeah, it's apparently the de facto WebSocket library for Node. Seems pretty straightforward to use. So I grabbed it from npm, and I tell it which port I want to open the server on, which is 3001. And then I tell it that as soon as there's a connection, as soon as the front end connects, after the front end downloads all the HTML, executes the JavaScript, and tries to make that front end, that WebSocket connection, then we immediately send it the client manifest so it can create all the buttons. And then before that, I also listen for any messages, and whenever I receive a message, it's just going to be the ID of the sound that the user requested, and then I say I'm going to play that sound, and I get the mapping from in my server manifest from ID to file, and I just tell SFX to play the sound, and that's it. That's how it works. The rest of this is all boilerplate. So we can actually see some of the logging taking place here. Here's the output of the server running, and if I open up my phone again, actually I'll do it in the browser because you can then see the console. So if I play like Zelda 1, it says clicked 0, and then down here it said that it received a request to play the fanfare heart container sound from Ocarina of Time, and then it played it. And that's it. And that's how Wacky Morning DJ works. And it's sloppy code. It's something I wrote overnight, but it works. And you know what? Build a thing. It's better to write something that works, even though it's ugly inside, than to just imagine this like beautifully perfect code and never write it, which I am often guilty of whenever I'm starting out a thing and I want it to be perfect. It never gets done, is what happens. If I want a thing to be like perfectly crystallized, beautiful code, it never gets done. So that's why I just wrote it in a sprint at night, and I used all of these like pre-existing tools, and it works. And so next week, when I'm working on stuff, or sorry, next week because you're watching this on Wednesday. Next week, whenever I'm working on stuff, maybe I'll play some sounds and I'll control it through my phone so that you don't have to see me like switch over to this tab and see what's coming. So like I can be working on something. Here, we'll do a practice. Say I'll be like, wow, it turns out that make manifests, it returns two things. I did not know that. I have leveled up. Oh man, this code in here is pretty ugly. From my phone. Isn't that cool? I don't know if it's cool. Maybe it's cool. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you're on YouTube or on Air Mozilla or on my blog or whatever format you're watching this on. Let me know what you think, and hopefully by the time you're watching this, the source code will be up on GitHub, and you can poke at it and clone it and and I don't know, run your own wacky morning DJ server and annoy your friends. I don't know. So let me switch back to my screen. Thank you so much for watching this extra short episode of The Joy of Coding. I know it wasn't a full-length episode. I apologize, but I hope it was still enjoyable. And next week, hopefully, we will have input from Marcus Stanga on the printing stuff that we were working on last week. I also think Jim, the other fellow who I had requested review on for those printing that OSX printing bug we've been working on, he's back from PTO, so hopefully he'll get to review my patches, and that'll be all great. And yeah, and maybe who knows what we'll do next week? We'll see. It's a mystery. So thanks for watching episode 15 of The Joy of Coding, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye bye.